Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I think it's only in a Unitarian church that a non-believer can get this close to the pulpit without bursting into flames spontaneously. However, if I should get struck by lightning on my way out here, just completely disregard all that I'm about to say. I have to admit, it's not the easiest thing to speak to you today, for a couple of reasons. For one, I don't think just one person can truly ever hope to speak for any group of people. And as someone who has on more than one occasion found himself with the unenviable task of somehow speaking for the entire black race to a group of people who were, shall we say, less than open-minded, I can tell you it's a daunting task. And for two, who in their right mind wants to ever admit that they're an atheist? I mean, you see, in our current culture, I don't think there is a more terrible statement that is looked down upon in mixed company than the phrase that consists of the 5 words, "I don't believe in God." I really wish that was an exaggeration, but unfortunately it isn't. As recent polls indicate, on average, people are actually more likely to vote for a pedophile, a murderer, and a kleptomaniac before they ever would vote for an atheist. And, of course, with the quality of some of our elected officials, that's not exactly all that far-fetched. In some states, atheists are routinely denied custody rights of their children in a divorce just because of their stated lack of belief. And of present day, you can be put to death for being an atheist in Middle Eastern countries, and possibly Texas as well. I mean, they execute everybody. So. And then, of course, there's a label of atheist being synonymous oftentimes with immorality, with constant comparisons to the malevolent dictators of Stalin, Mao, and Hitler. Although, to clarify, Hitler was actually Catholic. Not that that institution needs any more bad publicity. As you may have deduced, being an atheist doesn't appear to have any perks to it, other than being stigmatized with all that is evil. And while it's true that there are horrible people who happen to not believe in God, as I'm sure that's true of any group, there are also wonderful people who have that label, such as the actress Angelina Jolie and the martial artist Bruce Lee. So atheists can both be beautiful and badass, sometimes at the same time. And there's the billionaires Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, who are 2 of the most charitable people on the planet. And then to counter Stalin and Mao, we have Dilma Van Roosevelt and Julia Gillard, the leaders of Brazil and Australia, respectively, whose countries have less inequality and more class mobility than our own. But of course, since both of those leaders are also female, that might be more of a case for women ruling the world than that they are great atheists. But that's another talk for another day. It's a shame that more of those people don't come to mind when you hear the word atheist. As if they did, maybe regular people who work their 9 to 5 every day wouldn't be so scared of the repercussions they face for being told that atheists aren't worthy of love, as the comedian Steve Harvey says, or that we shouldn't be considered citizens of the United States, like former President George H.W. Bush says. And he's supposed to be the smartest of the Bushes. Or that atheists should be registered just like sex offenders are, as the renowned Baptist minister Mike Stahl says. Or that we will spend an extremely long time in the pits of scorching red-hot flame for all eternity, like pretty much everyone who's not an atheist says. Present company accepted, of course. It's tough enough to come out and say something that to you has no more gravity than saying I don't believe in Zeus or Poseidon. But to everyone else seems to carry heavy social repercussions. It's made tougher still when those words that I just quoted don't just come from celebrities or presidents or fire and brimstone fundamentalist preachers, but when they come from people who are close to you, who love you up only to seemingly want to tear you down upon hearing the revolution that you no longer believe what they do. There are countless stories of people who have come out as atheists only to be excommunicated from friends and family as they refuse to speak to them. That goes along with people who are often ostracized from their communities, along with children and women who have come out as atheists and been violently abused by their parents and husbands who hope to beat God back into them. Thankfully, my own experience with coming out to someone I was close to didn't have those severe of consequences, but it was eye-opening nonetheless. There was a period in my life that I had decided to become a devout Lutheran. The things you do for a girl when you're in love, man, I tell you. I called myself Finding God, and along with God, I met a Lutheran priest who became extremely close to me. For the sakes of my story, I'll call him Pastor Steve. Pastor Steve was a guy who could absolutely do no wrong in my eyes, or pretty much anyone's eyes. It didn't matter what day or what time of day or night it was. When you needed him, he would be there for you in a drop of a hat. It seemed that all that mattered to him was you and nothing else. He never judged you, nor get angry with you, no matter how much you deserved his wrath. And I used to think he was incapable of saying a cross word about anyone or anything. As even when he would get frustrated, his vocabulary would consist of "aw shucks" or "darn it to heck." If the entire world had turned its back on you, so that no one person would pee on you if you were on fire, Pastor Steve would at least spit on you. I felt there was nothing in this world that I couldn't talk to him about. And I told him things to this day that I haven't shared with too many other people. After about a year or so, I began to struggle with my belief in God and how that belief, at least for me, seemed to no longer conflate with the reality of things I saw around me. In a world that sometimes is full of immense and horrific pain and suffering, and where natural disasters happen that appear to be indifferent to all they touch, I couldn't find a divine plan. In a world where people, including the ones we love, sometimes die senselessly without any reason or rhyme, I could no longer believe that there is a benevolent being who had the power to stop these atrocities, but willingly acted against doing so. It was difficult to come to these conclusions, more so because, like anybody, it's hard to go against the grain of what you've been taught. And I had been taught that God was everything, and without him I was nothing. But for me, I found that when I let go of that belief that there was some almighty Father in the sky keeping surveillance of us, that it was less like I had let go of the comfort of a warm blanket, only to feel the full, cruel cold of reality, and more like the experience of a certain cartoon elephant who, when relinquishing hold of his magic feather, found that he had the freedom to fly as far and as high without it as he ever could with it. As Pastor Steve was a man I felt I could be open to about anything, I emailed him about my newfound beliefs, or lack thereof. And while I expected him to be a bit disappointed, I figured that he would respond back to me in the trademark Pastor Steve fashion with an upbeat reply wishing me Godspeed. Call it naive if you will, which is why I was shocked to get inundated with several emails, the majority of which were in red letters and all caps. That was less Godspeed and more like, well, God damn you. Gone was this cherub-like gentleman replaced by this bitter Mr. Hyde who didn't just denounce my beliefs, but seemed to denounce me. Our correspondence with each other went back and forth for about a year, getting to the point where in his responses, some of my ideas, in responding to some of my ideas, he somehow seemed to miraculously develop a vocabulary of some four-letter words that I didn't know he was capable of. I didn't know whether I was talking to a priest or a maritime sailor at the time. It seemed ironic as I was supposed to be the atheist and he seemed to be the one who was losing his religion. Our correspondence culminated in one email that I'll never forget, as it actually inspired this talk today. Marcus, he said, an atheist is defined solely by what he doesn't believe. The word itself means to be without. That is all it means. He has no compass to steer him, so he is directionless in all his ways. No principles to edify him, so he will fall for anything. No moral fiber that sustains him, so he consists of nothing. And therefore, with him having no beliefs, he is not deserving of the life given to him. His very existence is pitiful, unredeeming, and pathetic. As your entire life is a life lived without hope, without optimism, without certainty, it is pity that an atheist can never say the sweetest words that I am allowed to utter, that affirm his beliefs, as he doesn't believe in anything. The words I get to say are, "Let it be so," or as a believer would say, "Amen." The path you are on is a lonely, cruel walk towards a deserving eternal lake of hellfire, and one where you will know nothing but agony, torture, and sadness. But I needn't tell you that, as you will find out for yourself soon enough. With warmest regards, Pastor Steve. Thankfully, I haven't gotten too many more heartfelt letters from Pastor Steve as we stopped speaking to each other a few months ago. But since then, I've had several encounters with others that certainly share in the agreement of his assertions. People can never seem to fathom what life is like without just this one single belief, as if it is the belief that stirs all others. The thing is, I usually don't correct people when they tell me that I live a life without belief, because they're 100% accurate. Indeed, I do live a life without belief. You see, yes, I am without a belief in a deity who dictates my moral absolutes, because instead I believe that we have the tools that equip us to construct an idea of how life can and should be lived. I believe that these tools include a mind that concerns itself with the community of our fellow men and women, a heart that bleeds with empathy, and a history that distributes a wealth of knowledge from the experiences of those who have come before us. That is why I do not believe that the good of an individual is rightfully measured in proportion to how he appeases some being, but instead measured by a willingness to do good even when you think no one else might be watching. And yes, I'm without a belief that what some call spirituality in church is solely the property of a holy book or building, because while I don't doubt the claims of people being overcome with the Spirit or force are true, I know it's possible to feel the Spirit in a church that extends past four walls, one that we all belong to, that provides the self-transcendence that is found in loving someone as much, if not more, than you do yourself, as a parent does a child. One where I've seen people overtaken by a rapture that comes from the bliss found in the arts by ears lent to Shakespeare's words and Jimi Hendrix's guitar. And I've experienced the euphoria that comes with the passionate touch of a lover's embrace. A church where I've seen the sheer awe that you get from the contemplation of this vast universe. And I've experienced the grace that none of us is deserving of, found by true companions in friendship, and who put up with you many times in spite of yourself. And speaking of deserve, like traditional believers, I am without a belief that we deserve this life. Because I look at so many things that I had absolutely no control over, such as where, when, and to whom I was born. And I see that I don't deserve this life any more than a child born in Botswana who will not see his 5th birthday because he will be dead from AIDS, nor a young Jewish woman born in fascist Germany during World War II whose life was cut short by internment in concentration camps. No, I'm not deserving of this life, because in my genome are the genetic material that makes us all up. There are endless combinations of ways that material could have come together, so that the number of people who could have been born instead of me outnumber all of the drops of water found in the ocean. My own genome could have come together in such a way that with geniuses that rival Einstein and athletes that are superior to Michael Jordan, those people could have taken my place on my birthday. And yet, instead of those people existing, here I stand in front of you, just an ordinary man of no distinction. So I don't deserve this life, but I believe that I can make myself worthy of it by living not as if it is a marathon or sprint to be endured nor hurried through, nor as something to be taken for granted or squandered, but as a unique privilege to be savored, treasured, and cherished. making myself worthy of it by living a life like my grandfather, with a passionate curiosity whose hunger for knowledge, wisdom, and life itself could never be satisfied. Living in such a way in his deeds and actions so that although his life was finite, his life's work continued to echo in the lives of others. So that hopefully people could say that the pain they felt in their hearts at his passing, if that was the price they had to pay for the love he left, they would have gladly exchanged it just for having known him. I am without a belief that simply stating our hopes in words is solely enough on its own to solve the trying times we are often confronted with in life. Because instead, I believe that we encounter serious problems in our world. And they demand from us serious solutions. And while I do value reflection and contemplation, I don't know of too many problems that have ever been remedied by bowing away from them and dropping to our knees, but instead by standing up on our feet and facing them courageously, even when you have to strain with your best to do so. I am without a belief that stigmatizes or segregates us by race, gender, or sexual orientation, as if we are all some subspecies of each other, or as if I could possibly value someone else's worth any more or less than my own. So you might find this surprising, but I do not believe in atheists. Are agnostics, are humanists, are Christians, are Muslims, are Jews, are Gentile for that matter. No, what I believe in is people. People who want to know that they aren't alone in this world. People who want to know that they are loved. People who have doubts and uncertainty and try to color in the shades of gray this world offers them with black and white. People who sometimes try and fail and sometimes persevere and succeed. People who sometimes make mistakes that they can never seem to fix. And people who can transform their lives with the resolve to do better. People who want so desperately sometimes to stand out, but at the same time so desperately to fit in. People who sometimes hurt and get hurt by people they care about with every atom of their heart. People who sometimes crumble in the face of adversity, and people who sometimes find a strength in them to discover greatness within themselves that they never realized they had. People who are all in this together and want to know that their life has meaning, has purpose, and that this life is not lived in vain. And you know what? I believe that that does not make us sinners or saints. That doesn't make us infidels or wretches or scourges of this earth. Nor does it make us debtors who owe a bill that they can never repay. And no, that does not make us weak or abnormal. What that makes us is human. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. Nothing. And as that is, there are so many things in this world that ails us, that causes us fear, frustration, anxiety, and despair. Things such as inequality, racism, xenophobia, senseless violence, and poverty. That regardless of your beliefs in a deity or lack thereof, we can agree have their beginnings in human beings. But we can also agree that there is so much good in this world that share those same beginnings. As such, I've heard it said once in a discussion about God that he is an idea that constitutes the best that is inside all of us. The best that we're capable of. And that's one idea I've certainly pondered. Because as the former president of ours said, a Catholic no less, that ultimately on this earth, God's work must be ours. And with all respect to Mr. Kennedy, I believe that it cannot stop there, because so too must God's compassion, his grace, his forgiveness, his mercy, his kindness, his sacrifice, and his love be ours. And I do not believe that those things, and I do not believe that those things are ours because it is the will of a supreme being who is claimed to be housed above us, but because it is the choice of human beings who reside amongst us. And that is a choice that we can make at this very moment. And in making that choice, I think we will find that heaven is just another word, a euphemism really, for a place that we call earth and lives that we call our own. I must confess to you, however, that the naysayers are correct, at least in this case about an atheist. Because I stand here today without any hope or optimism about that belief happening. No, instead I stand here certain of that belief happening. And so you see there are things that are so worthy of devotion, that are so majestic in their conception, so beautiful as to inspire faith that they will come to pass, that no matter what you call yourself or you are labeled as, we can all answer to them with the resounding affirmation of let it be so. Or, as even a man that some people will call an atheist would say, amen.